Okay, so let's jump right in. There's a really big shift happening in the world of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I mean, what used to be a very loud, public-facing thing for companies is, well, it's changing, big time. We're going to look at what's behind this shift and dig into a pretty powerful new way to think about it all, seeing inclusion not as just another program, but as the core operating system of a company.
But before we get into all the changes, let's ground ourselves in the why. What's the whole point of this work? It all comes down to this one word: belonging. See, inclusion is the stuff a company does, the systems, the policies. But belonging, that's what an employee feels. It's that feeling of, okay, I'm seen, I'm valued for me. And that's the ultimate goal, right?
Right. And that feeling of belonging, it doesn't just show up out of nowhere. It has to be built on a really solid foundation. And that foundation is psychological safety. This is huge. It's the belief that you can actually speak up, share a crazy idea, ask a question, even admit a mistake, and you won't get punished for it. When teams have this, they innovate, they perform, and when they don't, well, pretty much nothing else matters.
This quote from Unleash, man, it just nails the ideal state. It's not about just being tolerated, It's about being accepted without any conditions and having what you do be genuinely valued, not just given lip service. It's a pretty powerful picture of what a truly inclusive workplace is all about. Okay, so if the goal is so clear and so good for everyone, here's the big question, the tension at the heart of what we're talking about today. Why are so many companies suddenly getting so quiet about all this? Why is the actual language we're using changing so fast? And look, this isn't just a vibe or a feeling. We have the receipts. The data is clear. In major corporate filings just between 2024 and 2025, the use of DEI as a term, it dropped a staggering 68%. Mentions of the word racial fell 58%. Even the word diversity is down by a third. This is a massive, measurable pullback in public language. And here's what that actually looks like in the wild. Huge companies are actively rebranding this work. JP Morgan Chase goes from diversity, equity, and inclusion to the much more neutral workforce composition. Walmart and USAA are shifting to belonging. Even SHRM, the big HR organization, is now saying inclusion and diversity. The language is getting very, very careful. And this is so crucial to get. This is not just a marketing exercise or a change in vocabulary. It goes way deeper. We're also seeing companies become less transparent. They're sharing less about pay equity. About 1 in 5 S&P 100 companies have either dialed back or totally scrubbed their public DEI goals. So this is hitting accountability too. Which brings us to the million-dollar question, right? Are we just watching the end of corporate DEI as we knew it? Is it a full-on retreat? Or is this something else entirely? A strategic pivot, a recalibration for a totally new environment? So what's causing all this? It really boils down to 3 main drivers. First, you've got intense legal pressure after some major court decisions. Second, there's a very real political backlash, and companies are just trying to avoid painting a target on their chest. And finally, it's about brand safety. In a world this polarized, they're worried about alienating customers, no matter what they say. So in response to that pressure, we're seeing 2 main strategies emerge. On one hand, you have what NYU law professor Kenji Yoshino calls stealth DEI. Basically, keep doing the work, but do it quietly to avoid the drama. Then there's long DEI, which is all about shifting the conversation to the undeniable long-term business case for all of this. And that long DEI business case, it's built on this one huge number, 2042. That's the year the U.S. is projected to become a majority-minority nation. For people under 18, that's already the reality. This isn't about politics. It's just demographics. It's a certainty. Your future employees and your future customers are going to be more diverse, period. And that brings us to the core idea. If you want your company to thrive in that future, inclusion can't be some side hustle program. It's not an app you can just uninstall when it gets inconvenient. It has to be baked into the very DNA of your organization. It has to become your operating system. So, what does it actually mean to install an inclusion OS? Well, it's got 4 key parts. It has to start at the very top, with leaders who are visibly all in. Then, you have to weave fairness into every single step of an employee's journey, from hiring to promotion. It's about building that psychological safety into how teams work day to day. And finally, you have to measure everything with real data so people are held accountable. Let me give you a really concrete example. Think about that talent lifecycle piece. Technology can be a massive help here. You can use AI, for instance, to screen resumes and look at candidates based purely on skills and qualifications. It can help strip out some of that unconscious human bias that always sneaks into the hiring process. But here's the thing, and this is probably the most important part. None of this works if you're just winging it. You can't improve what you don't measure. To really build this as an operating system, you have to get serious about data. Measurement is what makes it a real system, not just a bunch of good intentions. And you might be thinking, how on earth do you measure a feeling like belonging? Well, you can. There are validated scientific tools like this perceived group inclusion scale. By asking specific questions like, does this group give me the feeling that I belong? Or does this group allow me to be authentic? You can turn those squishy, subjective feelings into hard, actionable data. So when you're data-driven, your whole dashboard changes. The health of your inclusion OS isn't measured by press releases. It's measured by things like promotion and retention rates across all demographics, by survey scores on psychological safety, by who is actually represented at every single level of leadership. Some companies are even tying executive bonuses to metrics like these. This quote from Kenji Yoshino just perfectly captures the new reality. The law used to be the floor, the bare minimum. He says now it feels more like a ceiling that's being lowered onto companies, limiting what they feel they can do publicly. And that right there is exactly why having inclusion as a tough internal operating system is so much more important than having a fragile, public-facing program. So to wrap this all up, maybe this is the real takeaway. In this new era we're entering, the true test of a company's commitment to inclusion probably won't be in what they say. It won't be on their website. It'll be in how they operate, how they hire, how they promote, how they build teams, how they're coded from the inside out.